Do you know the extraordinary story behind the world's most iconic coffee brand? It's a tale of passion, perseverance, and the relentless pursuit of perfection. Grab your favorite cup of coffee, because today, we're taking you on a journey through time and coffee, where three friends and a visionary named Howard Schultz turned a simple idea into a global phenomenon. This is the extraordinary story of Starbucks, where every cup is more than just coffee. It's a commitment to making the world a better place. Let's dive into the remarkable story of Starbucks. Our story begins in the city of Seattle. There were three college friends who really loved coffee, and they wanted to start a business. One of these friends, Gordon Bowker, was like a coffee detective. He traveled all the way to Vancouver, Canada, just to find the most amazing coffee beans he could. People started hearing about Gordon's secret coffee missions, and they wanted some of that special coffee too. Then one day, a bright idea struck them like a lightning bolt. They thought, hey, why not share this incredible coffee with everyone? But they knew they needed some help because they weren't exactly business experts. So they turned to a wise coffee guru named Alfred Peet. He was like the coffee sensei of America, the one who introduced fancy coffee to the whole country. With Alfred's wisdom and guidance, Gordon Bowker, Zev Siegel, and Jerry Baldwin learned all about the magical world of coffee. They figured out how to roast coffee beans, and they gathered up their savings. In 1971, they opened the very first Starbucks in a tiny store near a famous market called Pike Place. At first, they sold not just coffee but also tea and spices. They chose the name Starbucks because it sounded cool and came from a place in a book called Moby Dick. Over the next 10 years, they opened 5 more Starbucks stores in Seattle, and everybody knew that if you wanted amazing coffee, you went to Starbucks. But guess what? In those early days, you couldn't actually buy a cup of coffee at Starbucks. Nope, they only sold the beans and the coffee-making gadgets you needed to make coffee at home. But wait, there's more to the story. In walked a man named Howard Schultz. He was a coffee machine salesman. He noticed that one of his customers in Seattle was buying more coffee machines than a big department store called Macy's. So he decided to check out this Starbucks place. As soon as he stepped inside and smelled that fresh coffee aroma, he felt like he was in coffee heaven. Howard thought, this is something special. He really wanted to be a part of it. So he asked Gordon, Siegel, and Baldwin to hire him. And in 1982, they made him the director of sales and marketing for Starbucks. A little while later, in 1983, Howard took a trip to Italy. He went to a big coffee show in Milan and was amazed. There were coffee shops on every street corner, and baristas were making coffee right in front of people. It was like a coffee party. Howard thought, wow, this is awesome. We should do this in America. After Schultz returned to Seattle, he proposed the idea of an Italian-inspired cafe to his bosses, but they were unimpressed. Their stores were functioning well and expanding, and people loved buying their coffee beans. Therefore, they saw no reason to jump into a new type of business. However, Schultz, being a master salesman, persuaded them to give his idea a chance by emphasizing that the experience was as crucial as the drink itself. His bosses reluctantly agreed to test the concept with a coffee bar in a new part of the city. Although the Milan-style cafe was a hit, Schultz couldn't convince the founders that this was the future of Starbucks. It was a disappointing outcome, and Schultz gave it his all. In 1985, he left Starbucks in defeat, at least for now. Stay tuned to find out what happens next. Howard Schultz grew up in the bustling city of Brooklyn, New York. His childhood was not easy. He knew the value of hard work and sacrifices from a very young age. In fact, Howard once did something incredibly brave to pay for his college education. He sold his own blood. That's how much he wanted to learn and succeed. Howard had an unparalleled passion for coffee, believing it to be more than just a drink. He envisioned a cozy cafe where people could savor exceptional coffee in a warm and welcoming environment, like a third home between their actual homes and workplaces. He opened his own cafe, Il Giornale, where he used Starbucks-supplied beans to create a comfortable atmosphere for customers to enjoy great coffee. Schultz saw this as a third place between home and work. Over time, Schultz grew to love Starbucks even more. He felt an irresistible pull to the green siren that represented the brand. Fate would eventually bring Schultz back to Starbucks, where he would lead the company to even greater success. As fate would have it, Starbucks was facing financial challenges. 2 years after they acquired another coffee company called Peet's in 1984, the Starbucks founders realized they had bitten off more than they could chew. They decided to focus on Peet's coffee instead of Starbucks. In 1986, the founders made a decision that would change the course of Starbucks. They decided to sell what remained of Starbucks. And who did they think of to take over? None other than their former employee, Howard Schultz. When Howard heard about this opportunity, he was thrilled. But there was a small problem. They wanted a whopping $3.8 million for the company, and Howard didn't have that kind of money in his pocket. After Howard Schultz was given a 60-day exclusive period to gather the necessary money, he embarked on a journey to find investors who shared his grand vision of transforming America's coffee culture. However, this task would not be an easy one. You see, in the United States, coffee consumption had been on the decline for over 2 decades. Soft drinks were becoming more popular, and people were drinking less coffee. But Howard Schultz was determined to change that trend. He wanted Americans to embrace a new coffee culture, one inspired by the coffee shops he had seen in Italy. But Howard had an even bolder plan. He wanted to sell his high-quality coffee at a price of $3. This was a steep price for coffee in those days, and some customers couldn't believe it. This was a daring move because most Americans were used to paying only around 50 cents for a cup of coffee, assuming they even drank it. But Howard believed in the quality of his coffee, and he was willing to bet on it. In the summer of 1987, against all odds, Howard Schultz pulled off something that seemed impossible. He successfully raised the $3.8 million he needed to acquire Starbucks. When he took over and merged Starbucks with Il Giornale, his daring and ambitious vision began to take shape. Howard knew that to bring coffee back into the hearts of Americans, he needed to grow Starbucks quickly. So he set out to hire top-notch managers and open Starbucks stores in new places as fast as he could. Within just 5 years, there were 140 Starbucks locations, and they decided to become a public company, which meant that people could buy shares of Starbucks. On the big day of their public debut in 1992, they priced each share at $17, and people couldn't wait to buy them. They raised a whopping $25 million for the company. With all that money, Howard could accelerate the growth of Starbucks even further. By 1996, they celebrated their 1,000th store opening, and they ventured into new lands, opening Starbucks in Japan. 3 years later, Starbucks experienced another doubling in its number of stores, reaching a total of approximately 2,500 outlets. But Howard's vision was not just about opening more stores. It was also about creating a consistent Starbucks experience, no matter where you were in the world. Whether you walk into a Starbucks in Tokyo or Seattle, you can expect the same great-tasting coffee served by friendly baristas in their iconic green aprons. That's what made Starbucks special. Howard also wanted to introduce Americans to new coffee words like cafe latte and grande cappuccino. Instead of using regular words like small, medium, and large, he chose fancier words like tall, grande, and venti. People found it cool and exotic. After a long and challenging journey that spanned 13 years, Schultz effectively introduced America to the cafe culture he had first encountered during his trip to Italy. What's even more remarkable is that Schultz had managed to shift the way Americans perceived coffee. When Starbucks first started, some customers thought their coffee was too strong. But Schultz didn't give up. He convinced America that this was how coffee should taste. In 2000, after seeing his vision come to life, Schultz stepped down as CEO on June 1st. But he didn't leave entirely. He became the company's chief global strategist. Starbucks was doing great, and Howard felt like he had accomplished his dream. Amidst the changes in leadership, Starbucks embarked on a new voyage, setting its sights on even greater expansion. From 2000 to 2007, the company's growth skyrocketed, more than quadrupling in just 7 years. They were opening an average of 1,500 new stores each year, which equates to over 4 new locations every single day. However, as Starbucks expanded rapidly, it encountered its fair share of challenges. One particular incident became infamous and costly. Starbucks faced significant challenges during its rapid expansion, notably when it opened a store inside Beijing's historic Forbidden City, a site with a 600-years-old history. This decision stirred sharp criticism from the Chinese media, accusing Starbucks of disrespecting Chinese culture and likening it to an invasion of China's historical heart. Under immense pressure and amidst cultural sensitivity, Starbucks was eventually forced to close the controversial outlet in 2007. At its peak, Starbucks was expanding at a breathtaking rate, opening a new location every 4 hours. On the surface, it seemed like the coffee company was riding high, with Wall Street rewarding it for its consistent year-over-year record revenues and profits. Beneath the surface, a hidden challenge was eroding the very core of the company. Starbucks' rapid expansion was covering up some significant problems. Despite the impressive overall financial numbers, there was a concerning trend of slowing same-store sales. Starbucks had unintentionally become its own competition, thanks to the oversaturation of its own markets. However, the most significant concern was that the company's management had been cutting corners for years. They prioritized profits over product quality and the customer experience, something that went against the core values Howard Schultz had instilled in Starbucks from the beginning. The authentic art of coffee making was fading away as baristas no longer manually pressed coffee. Instead, management opted for fully automatic espresso machines that churned out lattes like an assembly line. The sense of community was fading as drive-thrus replaced the cozy feeling of sitting in a cafe. It felt as though Starbucks had lost its soul amidst this period of rapid expansion. The stock price may have tripled, fueled by a booming economy, but the global financial crisis in the late 2000s hit Starbucks hard. As consumers faced job losses and shrinking 401ks, wallets tightened, and suddenly, an $8 coffee seemed like an extravagance. In a leaked memo, Howard Schultz voiced his concerns to Starbucks senior management. He lamented that they had removed the romance and theater that was essential to the Starbucks brand. Bagged coffee had lost its distinct aroma, and the automatic machines, while saving time, had sacrificed the unique experience that made Starbucks special. With Starbucks' stock price plummeting, the stage was set for Howard Schultz's return as the CEO on January 8, 2008. His first steps as CEO were bold. He had to let go of some top executives and close down many Starbucks stores. But his main goal was to bring Starbucks back to its roots, focusing on top-quality products and an exceptional customer experience. To show everyone that Starbucks was committed to getting back on track, Howard did something extraordinary. On February 26, 2008, he made the surprising decision to close every single Starbucks store in the United States for a whole afternoon. This meant that for 3 hours, baristas were given special training on how to craft those delicious Starbucks drinks we all love. This move cost Starbucks around $6 million in lost sales, but for Howard Schultz, it was a necessary step to bring Starbucks back to its former glory. The new CEO was determined to bring back the freshly ground coffee beans and the original La Marzocco manual espresso machines. These machines not only made great coffee, but also added a touch of magic to the coffee-making process. Watching baristas create your coffee became a special part of the Starbucks experience once more. With incredible foresight, Starbucks also hired its very first chief technical officer. They even introduced the Starbucks loyalty card. This card was just the beginning of Starbucks' journey into the digital world. It paved the way for Starbucks to create its own app, which today is responsible for an astonishing 30% of the company's total sales. You can even order your favorite Starbucks drinks with a tap on your phone. Under Howard Schultz's leadership, once again, Starbucks thrived. Its stock price soared, increasing by almost 1,600% in just 9 years. Quality was back, and Starbucks was ready to grow again. One of the places Starbucks set its sights on was China. They started opening Starbucks stores there at an incredible rate, one store every 15 hours. By December 2016, Starbucks had become a beloved part of China's landscape. Confident that Starbucks' founding principles were now deeply rooted in the company's culture, Howard Schultz made a decision once again. He stepped down as CEO, passing the baton to Kevin Johnson, who was the chief operating officer at the time. However, Howard Schultz's vision and guidance had transformed Starbucks into a multinational giant worth over $100 billion. Yet what's even more inspiring is that Starbucks never lost sight of its philosophy of corporate social responsibility. This philosophy meant that Starbucks believed in putting people before profits. Today, Starbucks lives up to that promise. In fact, Starbucks spends more on healthcare for its employees than it does on coffee beans in its North American stores. They also wanted to create a place where employees felt like family. That's why Howard Schultz doesn't call his baristas employees, but rather partners. And did you know that Starbucks covers college tuition for its partners? and provide stock options for every individual, including baristas. It's all part of Starbucks' commitment to social responsibility. Staying true to these values of customer service, quality, and a better experience has taken Starbucks from challenging times to where it stands today. Starbucks isn't just about coffee. It's about making the world a little bit better, one cup at a time. So, remember the story of Starbucks the next time you visit one of their stores. It's a story of hard work, dreams coming true, and a commitment to making the world a better place. If this story has resonated with you and motivated you to reach for your own aspirations, please show your support by liking this video, subscribing to our channel, and leaving a comment below.